Hi, welcome to another edition of What It Is, a place where we talk about the ways immigration laws affect everyone. Today, we're going to answer the question, what is marriage fraud? Hi, I'm Michael Ʀɛʟtz훠dɛ, immigration attorney and founder at Ʀɛʟtz骝 Law PC based in Torrance, California, where we practice immigration law in all 50 states. So what is marriage fraud? If the couple cannot prove that they intend to establish a life together, then by law it's considered to be a sham or a fraudulent marriage. Documentation is very important in marriage-based cases. Things that the government routinely looks at to show that to signal that the parties intended to establish a life together include a lease agreement showing that both parties live together, utility bills showing both names on it, evidence of bank accounts or commingling of finances. Other things that are helpful are affidavits from third parties who can attest to their knowledge of the bona fide marriage. And then the parties are also allowed to include other documentation to show that their marriage is a valid marriage that might be unique to their case. Consequences of a marriage fraud finding can include not only removal or deportation from the United States, but it can also be a bar to obtaining permanent residency or green card in the future. If somebody is removed based on a fraudulent marriage and then they may become eligible in the future in a different green card category, they might be ineligible based on this marriage fraud finding. Detecting marriage fraud is a top priority for immigration officials. They like to routinely cite this survey from the 1980s that supposedly says around 30% of all marriages are suspect for immigration purposes. However, that study is routinely discredited, but sometimes the government likes to rely on it nonetheless. Regardless of what statistics the government relies on, the law is clear that if they are going to accuse somebody of marriage fraud, the bar is very high. The government's evidence must be substantial and probative. Those are two factors that have significant legal consequences and are not easy to establish in any case. If a couple is suspected of a marriage fraud at the early stages of the process, it's possible that when they get to the interview stage, they might be put in what's called a Stokes interview. More on that in a separate video, but generally a Stokes interview is where the government separates the parties in the marriage, asks them the same questions, and then compares the answers to see if the parties really do know about each other and establish a life together.
I have been to hundreds of immigration interviews, not just here in New York where I'm physically based, but actually all over the country. And I've traveled to multiple states, multiple parts of the country, because I like to see what it's like at these other locations and to see what officers may ask. But what are they asking and what can you expect? And are they asking anything different this year? There is one thing that remains a constant in every single interview that I have ever been in my life for a marriage green card. And the first thing that officers almost will always ask is about your how we met story. Officers will always want to know, when did you meet your spouse for the first time? How did you meet? And when was the first date? 99.9% of all of the marriage interviews that I have ever been in attendance at have always had these questions asked. So the best way to prepare for this question is to actually go over your relationship timeline with your husband or with your wife. What is your date of marriage? Guess what? This is actually a question that they will definitely ask, and you better remember your anniversary. And when we talk about the date of marriage, the only date that we are talking about is the date that is on your marriage certificate. Don't be surprised if the officer does start asking questions about things that you may think don't really matter. Some other questions that you can expect is, if you do hold joint financial accounts, the officer may ask, where is your bank? Who do you pay rent to? When did you open this account together? And I have also seen asked at the interview, does your spouse hold a checking account or savings account at any other bank by themselves? And hopefully you know the answers to this. And if you don't, now is a good time to make sure you know as much as possible about your partner's financial accounts.